What's up, guys? It's Josh Real from the metal album review channel Josh Real Music. Today we're going to be reviewing all Lamb of God albums. I'm going to start with their latest release to their first release and give each one a grade on this tier list, and then at the end of it I will do a proper worst to best based off of that tier list. I would like to start with the new album Omens. Omens is amazing. And to be honest, I would probably put it in their top 3 or 4 albums out of this whole discography. Omens, it has some amazing tracks on there. Tracks like Nevermore, Vanishing. Let me see. Gomorrah was great. Grayscale's great. And then arguably, I think the best song on the album may be the last track, September song. What was interesting about this album, Omens, is it was a shorter album. I'd have to look through, but I think maybe the shortest one they've ever done. And I know that they talked about that in an interview that they felt like some of their old albums kind of carried on too long, so they really wanted to make a point to refine everything on this album. But I have no issue with this album at all. I think it's a great album. I listen to it, well, at this point right now every day because I've been listening to all the Lamb of God albums probably for since the beginning of October, intentionally to make this video. But I would definitely give Omens an S tier. I think it's one of their best albums. I think it's great. I want them to keep going. I really need to see them live. It's one of my goals, but still making fantastic music. So I really love this Omens album. Um, so their release before Omens was the 2020 Lamb of God. Same deal. I'm going to put that as a S tier. And I'll kind of order these, which one I think is better at the end. But this album is super, super good. Really no complaints about it. One of their best albums, in my opinion. So, like I said, Omens and then this Lamb of God 2020. I do remember when this album came out that uh, it did get a lot of good feedback. I mean, people were thinking that this was probably the best album since Ashes of the Wake. I think it's one of the best ones they've probably had since Ashes of the Wake, but there is another album before this one that I really love, so I don't think it took this long for them to make a great album since Ashes of the Wake. But I absolutely love this album. I mean, and for me too, I wanted to say for y'all that have heard the album or know the album well, I didn't love like the first 2 tracks, which is kind of funny because I have this pattern for me with Lamb of God post Ashes of the Wake where the first couple tracks don't always do as much for me for some reason, but from like track 3 or 4 on pretty consistently, the rest of the album's usually fantastic. It was this way in the 2020 Lamb of God, like, so starting for me on track 3, Gears, love that song, and then I essentially can just listen to the album all the way through from that point because I think every song is great on that. Gears, Reality Bath, New Colossal Hate, amazing. Poison Dreams, one of my favorite songs on there. Ghost Shaped People's awesome. But like I said, pretty much from Gears on, I mean, it's so good. But this is definitely one of their best albums, in my opinion. Before this album, they released the 2015 Sturm undrang, which I probably just butchered that name. This is actually one of my least favorite Lamb of God albums for me, though. This one did sound more to me like, hey, they did stay true to their sound, but I don't know if it was just not feeling as passionate or what it was, but maybe they were passionate about it, but I just didn't find the songs that enjoyable. I have it pulled up here. The ones that really stick out to me are like Embers. I really like on this. That's the one with Chino Moreno, which, as you all know or will know, I'm gonna release a new Deftones ranking pretty soon, probably within the next couple weeks, because Deftones has been one of my favorite bands for over 20 years. So the fact that they did a collab with Chino Moreno was awesome to me, because anything Chino's on, I definitely want to hear. But yeah, that song I like. And then my favorite song on this album is Torches with Greg Puchado from the Dillinger Escape Plan. Um, Torches is my favorite song, hands down, on this album, though. And I'd say, too, even though I don't really like this album, I think Torches is one of the best Lamb of God songs, period, in my opinion. Like, it would probably make my top 10, I think, out of anything they've ever done. So I definitely recommend the collabs on this one. But yeah, the other ones just didn't do so much for me. I Can't really say why. I just didn't enjoy it as much. But if you love this album, that's awesome. And Lamb of God has so much material that I'm not writing any of these albums off. Like maybe I'll feel totally differently in a month from now or a year from now, who knows? But right now, I just don't really like it. So I'm gonna put this one as a C. So coming up, I'm very excited to talk about this next one. The one that was released before the 2015 Sturm undrang was Resolution. This is a fantastic album. I really, really love this album. I'm gonna put it up here and then I'll talk about it. Like I said, I'm gonna rearrange some of these at the end, uh, just so you can see kind of what I like best. But these are for sure all S tier albums. This album is fantastic. I feel like nobody talks about Resolution, and this was actually the album I was referring to when I was talking about Lamb of God 2020, when I was like, oh, people say that this is the best album since Ashes of the Wake. The only reason I can't fully say that is because of Resolution. This album is, like I said, it's great. Feel like it's not really talked about. Resolution, pretty much from start to finish, is just awesome. Um, like the song Desolation was the one that really grabbed me on this album and kept pulling me back. Um, just to listen and listen. But I really did love this album first listen. I'm just kind of going through. The number six is probably one of my favorite Lamb of God songs in their whole discography. I'd say that too, actually. So Desolation and the number six are would be in my top 10. Both those songs are SSS plus tiers, whatever. Those songs are awesome. But yeah, I like Guilty. I like Undertow, Invictus, Cheated, Insurrections. Probably my third favorite song on this album. Really great. Terminally Unique is amazing. To the End was like okay. Visitation's great. King Me's great. But essentially, pretty much, there's no bad song on this album. But I would say that this is an album. Actually, I'd say about these three. Actually, I can really listen to these albums all the way through. Be very happy with it. Just super enjoyable albums. These three. So if you haven't heard Resolution in a while, um, or maybe you already love it, or maybe you didn't like it when it came out. I don't know what people thought about this album when it came out, but fantastic, and I'd say it's one of their best ones for sure. The album that was released before Resolution was the 2009 album Wrath. This one too, I'm gonna put is a B for now, but this could be an A later. I need this one. I need to give this one some more listens. Now, Wrath, I've heard all the way through, probably at least 5 times, but these three up here really kept pulling me back so much that I didn't honestly spend as much time on Wrath. But I would say like In Your Words on Wrath is awesome. Fake Messiah is awesome. Dead Seeds is awesome. Um, Reclamation. I mean, this is a really, really solid album. It's interesting to me though, like when I heard this album, because this is post, uh, where is it? Ashes of the Wake. This actually sounds like a more raw album where I would have expected it actually to have been released, maybe around the as the palaces burn time or something like that, because it is a rawer album, which doesn't make it worse. I just sonically, I just would have figured it would have come before Ashes of the Wake, but it came post. So there you go. Anyway, but really good album. I think this one's definitely worth checking out. The next one we have is my least favorite Lamb of God album, which is the 2006 album Sacrament, which is the follow up to the 2004 album Ashes of the Wake. I may talk a little bit about these. Well, I guess this is the part I was going to say is that if I was seriously into Lamb of God in 2006, I would have been extremely disappointed with this album, having it be the follow up to arguably their best album, Ashes of the Wake. I felt like after Ashes of the Wake, maybe I should put it up here, but I'll talk about them both because I feel like it's related. Ashes of the Wake, definitely S tier, by the way. And like I said, arguably their best album, but I'll let you know if I think it's the best here shortly. Um, but this album came out after Ashes of the Wake, and I think because of the success of Ashes of the Wake, um, I think They said they had a big record deal. We're really trying to break the mainstream on this Sacrament album, trying to get, understandably so, just more fans. Hey, let's build up. We're getting a lot of success. Let's keep growing. I totally get why this album was made the way it was, and all those things, and radio friendly and all that. But this one really, like I said, for me, just didn't feel super genuine. There's some great songs, like, I mean, people love the song Redneck, for example. Like, there's some really enjoyable tracks, and I'd say the instrumentation is probably as quality as most of their stuff, but I don't know why it just it really felt like, hey, we want to grow our fan base and really be mainstream with this album. This is the equivalent to a Slipknot Volume 3 album for me, which I really like. Volume 3, by the way. Everybody knows that because I talk about Slipknot all the time because I love Slipknot. But Volume 3 is really good. But I'm just saying, like, for Slipknot, that was their, hey, let's grow our fan base, let's be more radio friendly. This was that for Lamb of God. But this one just didn't deliver to me. I think maybe in a year I'll try it again, see if it grows on me, but I really don't have any interest in returning back to this album. And like I said earlier, not so much this one either. But all these I'm very happy to listen to, frequently. Okay, so I almost forgot to talk about Ashes of the Wake, but yeah, man, Ashes of the Wake is, like I said, arguably the best Lamb of God album. This is a perfect record, start to finish. I think the production is the strongest out of any Lamb of God album. It is an amazing follow up to As the Palaces Burn, which was like a phenomenal album. And it's like, you know, As the Palaces Burn was so awesome. There's no way that Lamb of God could be better, but then they made Ashes of the Wake, and it was better somehow. So anyway, phenomenal. Um, it's hard for me to recommend to a new Lamb of God fan like which one to start with first, because I feel like maybe save Ashes of the Wake until you hear the rest of the discography, because even though I love like even these three, like this one is I guess I'm kind of spoiling that. This one really is a clear number one. It's just so perfect. And then these two I would say are like pretty close to perfect. And so, so all these would actually be really hard to decide on which one of these is number two. But this one is a very clear number one. I mean, that's just, and I'll say this too, actually. This is one of the best metal records, or sorry, one of my favorite uh, metal records of all time, actually. I definitely would put it in my top 10, potentially top 5, but that would be hard. I don't know if I'd do top 5, but top 10 metal records of all time, in my opinion, this would be there. That's that good. So this part's going to be definitely controversial. Uh, so before the release of Ashes of the Wake in 2004, we have the As the Palaces Burn, which I don't remember if it came out in 2002 or 2003, but it was the album before Ashes of the Wake. I am going to give this one an A, which some people think this is the best Lamb of God album, period. This is a fantastic album. This is actually the album that got me into Lamb of God, and I did own this CD in 2003, which I don't know why. I'm really glad I did, and and that I was introduced to this band. This was the album that introduced me to Lamb of God, and it is fantastic, right? So like Ruin, I can't think of all the tracks right now, but I always know the first four tracks are like perfect on this album. Sorry, I'm just going to pull it up real quick because I do want to talk about these tracks real quick. So I just pulled up the track listing on As the Palaces Burn. So Ruin, As the Palaces Burn, Purified, 11th Hour, all S tier, S plus songs. I heard the first four tracks on this one and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be the perfect album. Like I can't imagine this album getting any better. And then there's just kind of a drop in production for me, or pre-production, when it comes to how many tracks are on this thing. Track 5 through 10. So For Your Malice, really good song, but I don't feel like it's as good as the first four. Boot Scraper, I like better than For Your Malice, but still not as good as the first four. And then so on and so forth. But I would say my favorite songs after the first four tracks would be A Devil in God's Country and In Defense of Our Good Name. would be my favorite ones other than the first four. But again, I can listen to this album all the way through. I like all the songs, but just because I think that the pre-production isn't as good in tracks 5 through 10, that's why I'm not giving it a S tier, unfortunately. But the first four tracks are arguably four of the best songs that Lamb of God's ever made. So definitely hear that part, and that this album gets an A, which I think is totally fair. But like I said, a lot of people I've seen people recently even that would put this album before Ashes of the Wake. So people do love this album. If you're new to Lamb of God, this was my intro album. I think it'd be a great intro album to Lamb of God. So check it out. All right, and then these last two, I will say, probably won't sound very fair. It's I'm gonna give these like a B on both of them. I don't have much to say about these like the songs and instrumentally these are really good, okay? But just there's not a lot of singing in these, and it's more just kind of like screaming, which I'm good with screams. I'm good with like growls, too high pitch. I really like that stuff, but kind of mixed in with singing. There just isn't really singing on these, and that may sound cheesy, but that's honestly the only reason I don't really listen to these albums. I have heard them both all the way through though. If you like just constant screaming with no singing, you may give these an S tier. I mean, there's no issue with anything they did in this album. Like I think instrumentally it's great, the screams are great, but for me, like I said, I like some singing in a track, like kind of go back and forth or whatnot. Um, but if you love these albums or they're your number one, like I totally get that. All right, guys. So before we go, let's do a proper ranking. I did just move some things around. You probably know this from other tier listings you've seen, but essentially, so all these are B, for example. But whichever one I put closest to B is going to be a better album, essentially, in my opinion. So, and I did include BTP as most of the Lamb of God members made that album together. I thought it was fair to include it in this ranking. So there you go. So coming in at number 10 is going to be Sacrament as their worst album. Number 9 is Sturm, Undrang. Number 8, New American Gospel. Number 7, BTP. Number 6, Wrath. Number 5, As the Palaces Burn. Number 4, Lamb of God 2020. Number 3, Omens. Number 2, Resolution. And number 1, Ashes of the Wake. Thank you so much to my new and returning subscribers of this channel. I really appreciate you guys. You all have been awesome. Really enjoyed our conversations from other videos and hope to keep it up in this one. I'd love to see your ranking and tier list in the comments if you want to. Love talking about Lamb of God. Hope you all have a great day and thank you for watching.